What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Academy of Change. I am so excited to bring you this podcast. This is obviously episode 1, and I'm going to be explaining everything about the Academy of Change in this podcast. And really, it's a long time coming. I meant to try to drop this earlier, but it just didn't work out with all the details of the announcement and everything. And as of today, this is my new company. It's the same company. It's just more of a rebrand for me. And it comes from just my obsession in finding my true purpose, which is to help people completely transform their life, their health, their body, their mindset, really everything about that, create lasting change and become the best versions of themselves. That's because I am such a person who's constantly trying to grow. I'm constantly trying to transform. I'm constantly trying to become a little bit better and take one step in the right direction towards my goals. And through that, I've overcome so many things: addiction to alcohol, to gambling, to other things throughout my life. It's been a huge common theme. I've overcome things like body image, the scale, binge eating and emotional eating, my relationship with food and exercise, being able to just overcome things like my mindset, my identity, and shift that into the version of myself that I need to become to achieve the next level and the next goals, and being able to get into a better place with self-love and self-belief, self-acceptance, and just constantly get a little bit better. That's what I'm obsessed with. I'm obsessed with reading about it. I'm obsessed with investing in myself, in investing in different types of coaches who can help me get better so that I can help more people. And so through all of this stuff, I've really been able to completely transform my own life, even though it's always a journey, right? It's always like a work in progress. But I've understood that just the fact that I'm a little bit farther along, I can help other people. So I want to be able to do that on this podcast. I want to be able to help everybody out there who's listening to this on a daily basis, which we will. This first week, we're going to be dropping on Thursday, I believe. From then on out, it'll be dropping Wednesday morning, so that when you're going to work on Wednesday morning or when you get up on Wednesday morning, it'll be ready for you there. You can listen to it and you can hear about me talking about how you can change your life, transform your life in some way. Or you can hear me interviewing people about it, because that's what it's going to be. A lot of interviews with people who have changed in different areas, which I think that all of us really have made changes, right? I had a friend, Mitch Bauer, shout out Mitch, if you're listening to this. I was talking about this. I want to interview people who have made huge changes, have had breakthroughs in their life. And sure, that's a huge aspect, but he reminded me, he's everybody's made changes, right? And so sometimes it's about getting people on and reminding them about the changes that they've made. So I hope that throughout this, I can not only help you listeners be able to transform your life in some way, be able to change a habit, be able to create new habits in an easier way with less resistance, be able to create more lasting change in your life and just become a little bit better, 1% better than you were yesterday, or 1% better than you were before you listened to this podcast. I also want to be able to help my guests potentially, drum up some things from their past where they've been able to make changes so that they can make new changes in the future and be able to use some of the things from their past. And so I'd encourage you all listening to this podcast right now, dig into your past. If you're struggling with making changes, I'm going to be talking about many different ways that you can do this throughout this whole podcast journey. But I want you to understand that sometimes the best things we can do is we can dig back into what we've used in the past. How have we made changes? Look at the biggest things that you've changed. What were the steps you took? And on this podcast today, to kind of start it off, I am going to be walking through what I think is my biggest accomplishment. And one of the things I'm most proud of in my life so far, and that is quitting alcohol. I was addicted to alcohol. I had a lot of struggles. It led to a lot of big mental health struggles and kind of cascaded into me not feeling good about myself, not having the self-belief, not feeling like I can help other people. And once I was able to quit, it really was that first domino that fell that has allowed me to completely transform my life into who I am today, which is an ever-growing version. I'm constantly going towards that best version of myself. I'm constantly striving towards that ever eluding best version of myself. And so I'm going to talk about that today, but I also want to just help you create small changes in your life, big changes in your life, and just realize that we can all make changes and that it doesn't have to be that hard. It's not going to be easy. It's sometimes going to be uncomfortable, but there's more things out there. I just want to be able to learn more for myself too. Like, how can I draw common themes between every one of our guests that we have on and myself to figure out the easiest ways that we can all make changes in our habits in our life without having to hit rock bottom? It's way too, I've had to hit rock bottom in different areas to be able to make changes for some things, for many things. And I don't want that to be the case for you. And so hopefully my experience in hitting rock bottom and my experience in also not having to hit rock bottom in certain areas and make changes, and then our guests' experience in making changes, whether that's from rock bottom, we can draw those common themes and be able to outline steps. Or if you're listening, hopefully you can relate with some of our guests and be like, oh crap, like that really resonates with me. I can use that to change in this area of my life. Right. And so there's a lot of different ways I'm doing this. And I really want to learn a lot of things about my guests, things like their story of changing, why they decided to change, what it took to change, steps they took, all of these different things, just so that we can draw those common themes and be able to figure out how we can all make those big changes in our life, those small changes in our life, and just constantly get a little bit better. It's easy to look at other people and be like, oh, I want to just like teleport to where that person is. But that's not the case. That's not how it works. If we try to make a million changes at once, we're never going to get there because we're always going to fall off and fall off and fall off. And so that's why it's 1% better. It's a little bit of growth. It's constantly getting a little bit better and just making those check marks towards that. And so with that, thanks again for watching this. I'm going to go into my story of how I made one of my biggest changes. Like I said, that first domino for me that has led me to becoming such a better version of myself and just have so much more self-love and just self-worth, which is so key. I've been on a journey especially in 2023, to develop more self-love and self-worth and to change my identity and really just like become the person I know I need to become to get to the next level. And it has been an amazingly tough journey. There's been a lot of struggles. There's been a lot of weeks and days that I wanted to quit, but I didn't. And now I feel a lot better. And I know that there's going to be struggles in the future because I'm always trying to grow and I'm always trying to get uncomfortable. But this was that first domino. I quit alcohol, and reason why I quit. And actually, initially I wanted to drop this podcast on June 7th because that is my 2-year sobriety date. I was sober for 2 years on the 7th of June. And so now I'm a little bit over 2 years sober at this point, and it's the best and biggest accomplishment of my life. And so basically for me, alcohol was something that when I started, I could not stop. I started and it would be consistent. I was the pusher, right? I was the guy who was like, come on, let's go. Like, are we drinking tonight or what are we doing? Right? Like, are we just going to keep like sitting here sipping or are we going? Right? Like I was always just trying to get super duper drunk, really for many different reasons. First off, I wasn't comfortable in my own skin. I didn't like who I was. I was running away from who I was. I felt like the best version of myself at that time was the drunk version because that was the outgoing person. He talked to girls. He talked to anybody he wanted to. He did whatever he wanted to. He was the life of the party, right? I thought that was the thing. It also just allowed me to not feel the emotions I was feeling because I was feeling terrible emotions about myself. I did not like who I was. And that kind of continued to get worse and worse every week because I would binge drink from Thursday through Saturday. 3 straight days of binge drinking. And then I'd wake up on Sunday and I would feel completely terrible about myself. I would look in the mirror. My mental health would get a little bit worse. My self-confidence would get a little bit worse. My self-worth would get a little bit worse. All of these different things. And it was just that constant little tick every week until I hit that rock bottom where I just felt like I was in such a terrible place with my mental health and with all those things. And I got to the point where I never thought about killing myself, but I would wish that I wasn't here. And I would wish that I got hit by a car when I was crossing the street. And I would wish that somebody would just like end it for me, right? I did not feel good. I did not feel in a good place. And I did not talk to people about it. But it got to that point where I was like, either I change things or I start talking to somebody about this, or I might not be around much longer. And so I had to get down to that rock bottom to really change, which is not what I want anybody else to do. And so at that point, to go through the steps, I've outlined the steps for the first time that I've ever done this of what it took to change for me. And so for me, the first part of this was that realization at rock bottom. It was just how big, it was the awareness piece of it, how big of a problem it was, how much pain that I was in. I was in enough pain that I needed to change, or I was risking potentially my life and just really going down a terrible, terrible spot, potentially hurting people in my life, potentially just getting into this spot where I didn't know if I could handle that much more pain than what I was in. If I didn't view it as a problem, I would have never changed, right? And that's what I want you to understand. If you are somebody who's struggling with alcohol, drugs, anything in your life, nobody else can tell you it's a problem. The only way you're going to actually change is if you fully believe it's a problem. That's what I've realized throughout this. Step number 2 for me was breaking false beliefs that I had around that thing, right? I had around alcohol, as I had a lot of things that I believed about myself about alcohol. So first off, it was, that drunk Alex was the fun Alex, right? He was the life of the party, that I needed it to be social. Like I couldn't interact with girls, and I wasn't that good at like having conversations if I was sober, right? That's what I believed about myself. That I loved the taste, right? I was like, oh, I love it though. It tastes so good, right? And honestly, these days, like they have some dangerous stuff out there. Like there's stuff that does taste really, really good. It tastes like you're not even drinking alcohol, which I think is pretty dangerous when it comes to some people going at it. Like I said, I needed it to talk to girls, that it would change and really I had a false belief about quitting, that it would completely change my relationship with friends. I didn't think it was going to change my relationship with my family. I have an awesome support system. My family's amazing. They're always been behind me and everything. I knew that they would accept it. But I was worried about my friends because it's been involved at that point. It was involved in everything that I did. Everything we did as a group of friends, it felt like it was like alcohol was involved. All right, are we drinking tonight? Right? Are we drinking tonight? And then with family as well, it was every family event had alcohol there. That was a big portion of my family events that I had, the Christmas, the Thanksgiving, all this stuff. Like before then, it was like, all right, we're getting after it today, right? Like I would go in and my goal was just to get drunk and enjoy and, do whatever, right? I also thought that I needed it and that I wouldn't be able to have as much fun at events and weddings, right? Like these are just some of the many false beliefs that I had around quitting. I was like, this is going to really affect my life, right? That was the big thing. It's going to affect my life in a negative way if I quit. Like nobody's going to like me. And I have had a huge thing of wanting to always fit in, right? That's a big reason why I got into alcohol and why I navigated towards drugs and all of these different things. Is like I always wanted to be accepted, right? It was like, oh, the cool kids are doing this, right? Like the cool kids are doing this. Like I'm going to be accepted if I do this. But the nature of to actually break those false beliefs, there's 2 things that I did, and there's a lot of different things that are going to work for different people, right? And this is just my story. The first is that I went to therapy. I started going to therapy. First off, I used BetterHelp, which if you listen to any podcasts, I'm sure you've heard of BetterHelp. You can get whatever percentage off of it. And that helped me a lot. I started speaking with somebody, but then I also hit my deductible at my insurance. And so it was actually free for me to go to somebody in the area. And so I actually preferred that even. I was like, if I can talk to somebody face to face, that's more of like my style here. And so I found an amazing therapist in my area. I started talking and working through my problems, and really like just in combination with that, I started reading Alan Carr's book. It was like how to moderate your alcohol, how to drink in moderation, right? It was something along those lines. Because I was like, maybe I don't have to quit. Like maybe I can just like, the problem is I'm drinking too much. Like, I can't stop. Like, how can I moderate this, right? So I didn't even read that book with the intentions of quitting. I read it with the intentions of actually learning how to moderate my drinking, right? Which is kind of crazy. And that in combination, I would talk with my therapist about the stuff that in the book, because basically Alan broke all of my false beliefs over the course of the book. He's like, here's why you're lying to yourself when you say that you need alcohol to be fun. Here's why that you need it to be social. Here's why, like, nobody likes the taste, right? He's like, I'm going to break that for you. Like, who drank their first beer and was like, that's fucking awesome? Like nobody, right? You got to like acquire that taste. And then that you needed to talk to girls. So same thing as social and like all these different things. Basically every false belief was broken. And I was like, oh man, like that's amazing. Like that's what I needed, right? Because I had all these different anchors holding me back from quitting. And it got to the point where, I'd worked through like plenty of problems. I had worked through a lot of the false beliefs that I had. And I got to the end of the book. And before I got to the end of the book, I started telling people that I was going to quit. Because I was like, I need to quit. I knew about halfway through the book, I was like, I have to quit. Like, I'm not going to be able to moderate this thing. The only way this is going to work, and that I'm going to be able to continue moving forward and really just grow as a person. Because I felt like I just there was 2-3 years of my life that were I'd just taken steps backward. I'd not moved anywhere forward. I'd just been a drunk asshole for the course of those 2 to 3 years. And I didn't like myself at all. And I was like, I can't go about life this way. But halfway through, I was like, okay, I'm going to quit. I told my family, which is a very hard conversation, to tell them that you're going through like mental health struggles and that you've been talking with therapists and that you need to quit. It was a very, very difficult conversation. I still remember it was at their house. It was in their kitchen. And I was like, I'm going to quit, but I'm going to quit after my brother's wedding. Right. Like, so I ended up quitting on June 7th. That would have been, so if it's 2 years ago, 2021. And so my brother's wedding was on June 19th. And so it was like a little bit less than 2 weeks away. So I was like, I'll just quit after the wedding. Right. And after I got to the end of the book, I thought about it for a second and I was like, I need to quit today. I need to quit today because there's always going to be another thing. There's always going to be another wedding. There's always going to be another event. Somebody's going to invite you somewhere else. There's always going to be another reason not to quit or not to change. And so that's why when you see people, to give an example, everybody like in November is like, I'm going to quit or I'm going to start fresh on the first of the year, right? I'm going to start fresh on the first of the year. And that's why nobody ever actually ends up fully adopting those habits, because like you just go through another month and a half without even doing anything. Like there's always a reason not to quit. You have to quit. Whenever you think of something you need to change today, change tomorrow, like the next day, whatever it is, start making the changes. That's what I had to do. It was a very hard decision. It was super awkward. The wedding, like it felt weird because I've never like gone to a wedding and not got obliterated, let alone a family member's wedding. My brother, I was the best man. And so I had to make a best man speech sober, which ended up being amazing, but it was super duper difficult for a guy who thought that he needed alcohol up until that point. On top of that, I told some of my close friends about it. I was like, hey, I'm going to change. And this is what I was really worried about, because I was like, is this going to really change our relationship? Which it has, right? I'm not going to lie. It has changed the relationship I have with some of my friends. Obviously, I don't get invited to a lot of the things that are just around alcohol, which I am perfectly fine with. I don't care about that. I am on a different path, right? I'm on a path of growth. I'm on the path of transformation. I'm on the path of realizing my dreams and making a huge impact in the world. And that is a different path than a lot of the people that I've hung out with in the past. I still love these people to death. I still hang out with them. I still talk with them. But I've now started to also surround myself with more people who are on that same path as me, because it's a lot easier to get pushed down and to help other people get down that path when you're going there. So I had to commit to quitting, and I committed to doing it that day after I finished the book. And so, like I said, it was a very, very difficult thing, but I did it. And I was like, today is the last day. And then ever since then, step 4 for me was staying the course. And this is how I was able to do this, because this is generally the hardest part for people, right? Is sticking with these big changes, these lasting changes that you're making in your life. But for me, I've attached so much pain to those last moments of my time with alcohol, and even the last like year of that, but especially the last month of when I was just in such a bad place, such a terrible mental health spot. I hated myself. I didn't want to live anymore. All these things, I attached so much pain to it. And so when I think about drinking, because there's been plenty of times where I've thought about drinking over the past 2 years, right? There's been plenty of times I'd be lying if I said, oh man, it'd be so nice to have a drink. Or you see other people drinking and like drunk and you're like, gosh, it'd be so nice right now. Especially when I wasn't in great spots at that time too, because it's not like I just quit drinking and then all of a sudden like my mental health struggles went away, right? I had to work through those with therapy and with, reading and podcasts and just working on myself and digging into my past and just working on everything that I have over the course of those 2+ years to get into a better place with myself. And so I've attached so much pain that when I think about the alcohol, I go back to that visual of me looking at myself in the mirror and just seeing like how much I hated myself and such a bad mental health spot that I was in and just how I didn't want to be here anymore. And that makes it super easy for me to not take a drink. And it gets easier and easier every month. And this is my day. That's my day. And when I say my day, I was just at a event for Arete, which is Arete Syndicate. It's like Ed Milet and Andy Frisella's like mentorship entrepreneur group. It's absolutely amazing. Tons and tons of entrepreneurs, people trying to better themselves, transform their lives, really fits in with who I want to surround myself on a daily basis. And they had like a regional event here in the Midwest. And there was tons of amazing speakers. One guy, Chris Warnes, he is a former, he served in the Army. I think he served in the Army. I don't quote me on that. But he had an amazing story, just very graphic story, but amazing story about like his day, like the worst days of his life, where he lost a few of his members of his platoon, and he got blown up and just about was, he was basically his last. He had accepted death, and he had talked about, he's like, that's my day. And he got into a really rough spot in the future. And he's like, I drew back on. He's like, I was feeling sorry for myself. My best friend, I called my best friend. And he's like, pick yourself up. Like, you are the same guy who was face to face with ISIS members ready to cut your head off. And that was something that he was able to draw back on his day. This is my day that I draw back on. It doesn't get much worse than that for me at this point. Right. I can draw back on that when stuff gets hard, not even when it's just when I think about having a drink, which I don't really think about anymore at this point. I don't need it. I don't want it. I know that I'm way better off without it. Right. And that's just me. No shade on anybody who does that. And everybody can make their own choices. For me, I'm a much better version of myself without alcohol, without drugs, without a lot of the stuff that I've been addicted to in the past. And so that is the day that I draw back on when things get hard. But like I said, it gets easier and easier every month for me. And so those are my steps. It was awareness that it was actually a problem. It was breaking my false beliefs through therapy and through Alan Carr's book. It was committing to that quitting, right? I had to commit, and I committed now. I was like, today. I initially didn't do that, but I was like, I have to do it today. Like, there's always going to be another reason. And then lastly is staying the course and just attaching a ton of pain for me. And so maybe that resonates with you. Hopefully that maybe helps some of you, like, oh, maybe this will be what I got to do to quit, right? And I hope over the course of the episodes that we have with the Academy of Change going forward, that I'm going to be able to learn more about other ways that I can get better and from my guests, and also be able to combine my way that I quit this and my way that I've quit other things that I'll talk about here over the course of the podcast, to be able to help everybody change, right? If this resonates with you, try it out. Try becoming aware of your problem, that it's a problem. If you're in enough pain, like, that's the best place to be able to change. But if you're not, and you're just like, this is not serving me, what false beliefs do you have about quitting? What false beliefs do you have about yourself? Right? How can we go about breaking them? Do you need to get help? Do you need to get a coach? Do you need to go to therapy? What do you need to do to quit? And then commitment to that quitting, like stopping pushing it out, right? Stopping this, on 3 months, I'll do it. Or after this, I'll do it. Or after the first of the year, I'll do it. And then being able to attach as much pain. If that resonated with you, give that a try and let me know. Comment back on this video, or shoot me a message on Instagram. Alex Wojo Nutrition, or Facebook, Alex Wojciechowski, all the different places that I am. TikTok, Alex Wojo Nutrition on there as well. You can get in touch with me there, and make sure you subscribe to this. I'm so excited to be able to help you all going forward. This is my passion. This is my purpose. This is who I am. This is my life's work, and I am excited to pour it into the podcast and to pour it into the Academy of Change in general, and just be able to help everybody going forward, and also just be able to get better myself. So thank you so much. This was enjoyable. Like I said, make sure you subscribe on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. You rate us, you like this, you do whatever you got to do to share it with somebody who you think could benefit from my story, or that you think could benefit from this podcast going forward. We got some awesome guests we're going to have on. I already got some amazing people lined up, some amazing friends. If you know anybody who has made changes or breakthroughs in their life and would love to share that, please let me know as well. I'd love to have them on and be able to help our audience and just anybody out there who's trying to make changes in their life. So thank you so much, everybody. Hope you have an awesome rest of your week, and I'll be talking to you soon.